One of the things that was frustrating for me when women started coming and sharing these really difficult stories and circumstances, I remember having this conversation with one woman and saying, why do you want to understand what your husband is doing and what's going on in his head? Why is that so important to you? In my way of thinking, I could only help her, which is true. And I was thinking to those times that maybe you've had a similar experience when something really heinous has happened in our nation in particular, or around the world, maybe a school shooting, and it feels like all the attention should not go on the perpetrator of the violence. It feels like we don't want to give them any more press or give them any more attention and focus than what is necessary, but that the people who are to be honored and revered are the victims. And so that was my thought at the time. But what I realize is that it's important to understand abuser characteristics so you can understand what is happening and why it's happening. Like, what is the motivation? How do you know what to expect? How do you understand what's going on? So it's important as we look at this section that we realize that the truth is abuse is a function of the abuser, not the victim. I'm going to share a couple of quotes. This is from Lundy Bancroft. I don't have the book here. Why Does He Do That? Really, really helpful book. I have mine all dog-eared and stickied, and he just presents, again, that reflection in the mirror as we're talking about a perpetrator. He says, the abuser's problem is not that he responds inappropriately to conflict. His abusiveness is operating prior to the conflict. It creates the conflict, and it determines the shape the conflict takes. And when I give women this piece of information, I say, I want you to start observing. Just see how the conflict happens. What is he doing prior to that? And is there a way in which he keeps that going, or he provokes and stirs things up? And so to begin to see that it's not just that moment of conflict that's the problem, or that's not where it starts. It's initiated in advance. And then in Mending the Soul, Stephen and Celestia Tracy say this: what is exceptional about abusers is their commonness. You're not going to be able to pick them out. You don't see them. They don't look different. You might think that you would know a perpetrator when you saw them. And so I would ask you, when was the last time you saw a perpetrator? When was the last time you saw an abuser? Because it was probably today or yesterday, and you just may or may not have known it. Common characteristics. These are 4 common characteristics. They're in Mending the Soul, but it's really helpful for you to understand this and for you to help other people look for these things, because it will validate the fact that the person experiencing the abuse is not the problem. And again, we're looking for truth. This is about truth. So the first characteristic is a pervasive denial of responsibility. You will find this in the workbook on page 93. An example, a really great example, is Saul offering the sacrifice in 1 Samuel 15. We're not going to read it, but as you go back, if you want to remind yourself of that, Saul, he had issues. He gets impatient. He doesn't want to wait for Samuel to come offer the sacrifice. And so he makes a sacrifice, and he keeps everything that he thinks is valuable, and he destroys everything else. So when Samuel shows up, he says, "What is this bleating, of sheep that I hear? What is going on?" And then Saul shifts the blame and he puts it on the people. The people did, the people said. So you can see this denial of personal, well, who is the king? Excuse me, who's in charge? Oh, Saul, you're in charge. I forgot. No, it's Saul's responsibility. And he walks through these there are 5 different tactics that can be used. One is denial, outright lies. It didn't happen. It never happened. You can expect that from an abuser. It's not out of character. Justification. I did it, but it's not wrong. I had a good reason for doing it. Rationalization. Okay, I did that and technically it was wrong, but here's the excuse. Minimization. Okay, I did that, but it isn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. I just touched her on the shoulder. I didn't push her. I didn't slam her into the wall. I just touched her, minimizing what actually happened. Blame shifting. This is where we saw Saul admitting the behavior, but insists that someone else is to blame, particularly the victim is to blame. Okay? If you hadn't dropped and broken that glass, I wouldn't have had to fill in the blank. The second characteristic is bold deceitfulness. This is when David wanted Bathsheba. Broad daylight. He's not doing this under cover of darkness. He's doing this in front of everybody in the middle of the day. This idea of bold deceitfulness is the picture of a wolf in sheep's clothing. Absolute deceit, but out in front of everybody. Who's going to call it out? And you think, well, it can't be wrong or they wouldn't actually be doing that or saying that right here. Oh yeah, they would, because that's the way they behave. There's this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. If you're visiting with a woman and she said he's just like 2 totally different people, and it just is this immediate change back and forth, that would be a characteristic of an abuser. We're told not to be deceived. Do you realize that the word deceit is used 58 times in the Bible? So if there's bold deceitfulness, you and I want to know truth. We want to be looking at reality. We want to be aware of what should be happening and what is happening and what is not happening. A third characteristic, harsh judgmentalism. So guilty individuals respond harshly to other smaller faults. This would be the log and the splinter, like accusing you of the splinter when they have a log in their eye. King David, his response to Nathan. So when he hears the story about the man who had the lamb and then how that was taken and served for dinner, and he gets so angry about a lamb, and he has taken another man's wife, and he has taken that man's life, he has committed adultery, he has committed murder, but his anger comes out at this small, comparatively small example, which is only example. It didn't even happen. And so extreme harshness at that. Or Ahab's response to Elijah, a harshness for something that is small compared to the sin that they are committing. This is a form of displacing their shame onto someone else. It provides cover for deceit. So I am now much more skeptical, I'm just going to say it, I just am, of particularly men in positions of spiritual authority who take the high ground on theological issues and practical issues. And they're always talking about all the little small discrepancies or arguments that a person could have about these things that really don't matter, but that they become hyper aware, vigilant on those things, and yet I'm like, wow, okay, so what are we missing? Why is there so much energy on this really big thing that doesn't matter? That concerns me. It creates a distraction. So other people are so busy looking at this other issue that's being judged so harshly that they don't actually see the perpetrator and what he's doing. So yes, in the one home, it was the children washing the dishes. Dad, the abusive dad, is sitting in his recliner, and they're serving him ice water, and they are massaging his feet. I am not kidding. This is happening. And the children are in the kitchen doing all the dishes and sweeping the floor and doing all of the chores and things. So, okay, you could justify him anyway. But if something breaks, or if there is any amount of argument, there is this irrational, over the top discipline where children are thrown into walls and children are beaten, and there is a lot of, if you can picture this in your head, that these are grown men behaving this way toward people who are smaller, or who are not able to protect themselves, it's this discrepancy that doesn't make sense. And that's why I'm telling you, it doesn't make sense. You need to know that this is happening and be able to ask the questions that can uncover these things, because in that home, it's normal. In that home, that's just the way it is, and there is no alternative, and they don't understand. And then finally, calculated intimidation. So this could be Queen Jezebel's threat on Elijah and how she will kill him, and she has a plan. All right, so this isn't Bible, but you see this in the story of Snow White, right? No, yes, Snow White, where the wicked stepmother is out, and there's a calculated intimidation. Abusers create strategies to avoid detection. They're thinking, they're calculating. They want to use their power to protect their agenda or their goals or their desires. So often there will be a show of omnipotence, of them following through on threats, and they will make a threat and they will follow through as a way of showing that they can do anything. And if they say they're going to do it, it will happen. And that creates this fear and intimidation, and no one's going to push that. Again, very godlike, which they're not God, but they will set themselves up this way. Or a show of omniscience, which is stalking. That is what stalking is knowing where someone is and having that show of, or that use of, all this information that would make it appear as if they're omniscient. And it can involve a tracker on a car. It can involve location on somebody's phone, whether they're aware of it or not. You may not be aware there's a tracker on your phone, or a way that your location's being shared. Or a woman may have been told that this is good and we all do this and it's just what we always do, and we always do the, whatever 360 so that we know. And that can just be a normal part of life. All these different ways of stalking using surveillance. It's one way that to accomplish calculated intimidation. And then abusers set up consequences for if and when the disclosure is made. So on page 97 in the workbook, you will see a whole list of threats that can be used. They may not be spoken, they may be implied. And it's important as a people helper to realize that a threat does not have to be spoken to be real, to be used, to be wrong, to be sinful, to be illegal. So there's a whole list here, and I'll read a couple of them to you, because It's helpful to know. It says there are many wickedly cunning ways an abuser can intimidate his or her victim into not disclosing the abuse. The list below is by no means exhaustive. Threatening to hurt a loved one, threatening to injure you, threatening to kill a loved one, threatening to kill you. I'll add threatening to kill themselves, threatening to withhold finances, abandon you, send you away. I know children and their parents would say, if you do that one more time, we're going to send you to the zoo. And the parents laughed and thought it was funny, but little kids don't know that's not funny. I mean, they don't always know, or sometimes it is said half seriously, or we're going to send you away, or whatever it is. Shaming, threatening pets, convincing you no one would believe you. Telling you that if you don't take this treatment, that it will be turned on someone else. And again, even the implication of knowing that if you as a person don't take this abuse, that whoever's next in line will get it. Blackmailing with gifts, hush money, all of those things are threats that keep them from being found out. Next slide. Helpful to know this from Lundy Bancroft again. An abuser almost never does anything that he himself would consider morally unacceptable. He may hide what he does because he thinks other people would disagree with it, but he feels justified inside. He invariably has a reason that he considers good enough. In short, an abuser's core problem is that he has a distorted sense of right and wrong. This is a mindset. It's a way of thinking that pervades everything. When an abuser is doing these things, they aren't thinking, oh, this is calculated intimidation. Oh, this is harsh judgmentalism. It works. It gets them what they want, and in their mind, it's justified. So let's look at what the Bible has to say about this. Matthew 7, verses 16 through 20.
You will recognize them by their fruit. Are groups gathered from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? In the same way, every good tree produces good fruit, but a bad tree produces bad fruit. A good tree cannot produce bad fruit, neither can a bad tree produce good fruit. Every tree that does not produce good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So you will recognize them by their fruit.
If you think about the tree example, you realize that a tree has roots and a trunk, and then, the foliage and the fruit. So this is in Chris Moll's book, The Heart of Domestic Abuse, but it's a very core way of teaching biblical truth to think about a tree, that the root is your belief system and where your desires begin. And the trunk are the thoughts, and your thought life consistently supports and moves you toward gaining and maintaining, when you're talking about an abuser, maintaining the control or the power. And then you see the words and the actions that come from that. It's a systemic problem. This is not a behavior problem. This is not an outward appearance problem. This is a whole system, a whole way of thinking. The whole tree is impacted, and that's what you experience. And that's why simply changing the environment by removing the abuser for a period of time doesn't change who he is. You may see fewer of those behaviors if he doesn't have someone to take them out on, but the truth is that even after a separation or divorce, if he has not repented and changed, it just takes a different form. Nothing has changed. He will continue to use the court system, to use other people, to use any means possible, the church, family, children, all of these things, to enforce his rule and his law and to maintain that power and that control. So be careful. Abusers are intentionally difficult to see. They are dangerous, and they protect themselves and their pride at any cost. Wonder how long this has been going on? It's been going on a long time. Here is a quote from Richard Sibbes from 1630, and he says this: when blindness and boldness, ignorance and arrogance, weakness and willfulness meet together in men, it renders them odious to God, burdensome to society, dangerous in their counsels, disturbers of better purposes, intractable and incapable of better direction, miserable in the issue. Please be aware, be careful, take it to heart, do some investigating and learning on your own. It's not that there is no room for redemption, but it's really important to understand this is a systemic problem. It's going to require a work of the God and of His Holy Spirit. And God uses consequences, and God uses His Word and His people to bring that about. We'll talk about victim characteristics next.